Reading and writing text files in Python is really very simple. Let's make a working copy of files.py, files-working.py. We'll open that working copy, and we see that we have this simple loop here that reads lines of a file and prints them to the screen. So if we run that, we see there's our lines of file printed to the screen, and here's our input file, so we can see that that's exactly the same. Now, if we wanted to, instead of printing that to the screen, if we wanted to write it to a file, we could do that. Simply change this to in file, so we can have a separate one for our out file. Out file equals open, and we'll call this new.txt. We'll open that for write, and we'll open this one here for read. It defaults to read, but if I'm going to specify write, then I'm going to want to also specify read. Now, this is called in file. And all we have to do here is to say file equals out file. And now that print is going to print to the out file instead of to the screen. And since we don't have anything coming to the screen, I'm just going to print done here. So we know that we have gotten to this point. We get some feedback on the screen. I'll save that and I'll run it. And it says done. If I'll refresh the file system here, which Eclipse does not do by itself, we'll see there's a new.txt, and it's got our 5 lines of text in it. And so that is just a very simple way to write to a text file. Obviously, it doesn't have to be something you're reading from another text file. You can generate your own whatever and write it out to a text file very easily using print and the file parameter for print. Let's say that what we're doing is not necessarily line-oriented. Let's say that maybe we have a very large file with thousands of lines of text, and we don't really need to read them and write them line by line. We want to do it in some bigger chunks. So I have a file here called bigfile.txt, and you'll notice it is a really big file of text. It has 10,000 lines of text in it. And if we look at the properties, we can see that it's 320,000 bytes. It's 300K. So let's go ahead and open that one instead. We'll call it bigfile.txt. And we're going to read this in what's called buffered mode, instead of doing it line by line. We'll set a buffer size, and I'll say that's going to be 50,000 bytes. It's 300,000 bytes, so it'll give us a few chunks. And then we're going to start by filling our buffer in file.read and buffer size. And then instead of this here, we're going to use a while loop, because the read method on the file handle object is not an iterable, so we can't use a for loop. So we're going to use a while loop. We're going to say while length of buffer. And so as long as our buffer is not empty, then we will outfile.write buffer. That's really all there is to it. We read it again in the loop so that we're not just writing the same buffer forever. So it'll be buffer equals infile.read buffer size. And after we do the write, let's just print a dot to the screen so that we have some feedback that we're doing something. Dot end equals nothing. So this will just print dots on the screen right next to each other. And when we're all done before the done, we're going to want to print a blank line. So we'll go ahead and save that and run it. And we see we've got a handful of dots there. It means that we've written something, and we'll refresh our file system and take a look at the properties of new.txt, and it's exactly 320,000 bytes. We'll open that up, and there's all of our lines of text in there. So what we've done here is we simply read it in a few big chunks. And obviously 50,000 bytes is very, very small by today's standards. Your buffers can be bigger than that, or if you're on a mobile device or something small, maybe you do want them that small. We just did that this way for illustration. But this shows you how you can read and write in buffered I/O mode. This allows you to deal with bigger chunks of files than just line by line. So that's how simple it is to read and write text files in Python, and we'll discuss reading and writing binary files in a separate lesson.